Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Thanks. Um, if you just happen to be stumbling around in the woods and you came across this stream by accident, then I'm Isabel Rousset from Derivative, and this is Roy Gerritsen from YFX Labs. And hang on one sec, because I'm hearing the stream in my headphones.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's a lot better. So, no, I'm still hearing myself. We have our sound engineer next to me, and we'll get it fixed. But
Yeah.
anyway, so tell you a little bit about how this started. Back in the early days of pandemic, I had this idea that it might be really fun to have these informal, cozy chats with the community around the campfire. And I told Roy about it, and he liked the idea enough that he built this amazing, beautiful little low poly environment for us. So here we are, and
Yeah.
that's how we got here, Roy.
Second edition. Yeah. Yeah.
Second edition.
Yeah. Fun. It started really get a bit out of hand, right? Like we started really small, and then more and more on it, and yeah. So we had the first one, I think, a month ago, and yeah, they went okay. And then we start more brainstorming more, like who are we going to invite, what are we going to talk about. And I think the whole thing about this chat is not to stay a bit away from the whole technical side, but see what people motivates and what they're making, and now in these times with the Corona thing, and yeah. So we have a really awesome guest today. I'm really proud to have him on board.
Yeah. So how did we come up with the idea of inviting David Biancardi?
Well, I think like the whole, like you have several levels, right, within the community. You have the people that just start out and start making stuff, and then the longer you're busy with it, you start opening a company or you start to work for a company, and then in the end you start owning a company and doing the big stuff. And it's really hard to keep that same community feeling going and keep the whole creative aspect on it going. And I think David is a really big example for that. Like he has been using touch design since the beginning almost, I think. And
so, yeah.
we saw his presentation at the summit, and it's really remarkable what he has done with his company and how he has found the perfect balance in creative stuff, explorations, and still doing really big client works.
Exactly.
I think he would be the perfect fit for the first guest.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know David or didn't see his talk at the summit, Dave Biancardi is the founder and principal of AV&C in New York City. And they work on really, really large projects that typically introduce technologies and combinations of technologies that nobody has really sort of explored too deeply. So it's always super exciting to see what he's going to do next. And I think this might be a very good time to bring David in. What do you think, Roy?
Yeah, bring him in.
Yeah, let's see. Let's drop him in. Well, hello, Sir Biancardi. Welcome to the Campfire.
Wow, it's so nice to join you guys. And hi, Roy, and amazing to see you, Isabel, both of you in this context.
Indeed.
What a great space to be in.
Yeah, I mean, when we sent this to you, you were quite. It seemed that you were quite interested and quite happy to join us around the fire, and kind of like this format of kind of a very casual setting.
Well, for sure. I think we've all been inundated with everyone's wholehearted, but, sort of knee-jerky attempts at staying connected through the barrage of Zoom calls and other ways of connecting that we're really starting to miss the sense of place together. And I love that you guys have quickly and without sort of, really sort of overthinking it, just created something that your sense of intuition seems to have been spot on. Like I watched the way you guys were interacting on the previous episode, and it felt like you were sharing a place, and that's what we've been missing. So it's an interesting. Um, it's just one of the more interesting things that I've seen of all the millions of experiments that we've all been conducting.
We're very happy to hear that, of course, and kind of feel the same way every time we pop back in here. It feels really good, and it's almost like when I call my friends, I want to call them here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I imagine you did a lot of talks online. Like, how was it, the whole transition from having the meetings like in offices to the Zoom talks and stuff?
Well, there's working, and that's been an evolution of something that was already working, and now is really sort of mandatory to really find our groove in. And we can talk a little bit about that, because I think there's been some interesting evolutions, both just from a human standpoint and from how we're using our tools and how we're creating new ways of working. And then there's the connections that are, just keeping in touch with people, all the breakfasts and, hang out and have a drink or stop by the studio or this or that, that was, part of the fabric of our community and work. And that's also continues to happen. And then, and then there's the putting ourselves out there and having ideas and conversations in public. And that's been happening as well. The problem for me is that it's all been happening through this one channel. And this and so the only variety has really been the format of the conversations. Some have been more interview formats. Some have been more formal, some more conversational, some panels. So that variety is great. And it certainly allows, one nice thing is that you can go and have those experiences offline, out of sync with the live thing. So but it's tough because it's all these placeless collections of files of people. So
yeah, for sure. It's I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I developed Zoom fatigue about 2 months ago.
I'm working on Zoom endurance.
Yeah.
I must admit, like, I only use Zoom once or twice. Like, we work a lot over Skype and we do a lot of phone calls and stuff. But it also took me, I think me and my brother, 3 months in before we got a webcam. Like, we really didn't want to get into it. But yeah, at one point, yeah.
Well, it was really hard it was actually very hard getting a webcam for the longest time because computers and webcams were sold out everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, from a work standpoint, we transitioned fairly well, just from a logistics standpoint. I mean, obviously, it's all kinds of dislocation, physically, emotionally, just kind of process-wise. But we had the tools, and because we're already very distributed in how we work, both internally. I mean, we have folks, Colin's in Chicago, Brandon's in DC, Deborah's upstate. We have, this already internally, this fabric that's knit through some of those technologies. And then obviously our clients are everywhere. So we had been already getting better, and it's tough to transition from a call-based to a video-based way of working. And it's taken us, I'd say, a couple of years. Mm-hmm. But a lot of our clients were going through that same journey at the same time. So we found the ways of making that work along the way.
Yeah.
I mean,
and now people are being very generous with each other. We get on calls and it's like, hey, let's turn the cameras off. Like, yes.
Yeah, yes, I know. do you guys want to turn the cameras off? No. No,
I don't need to. I can just sit back
and get lost in the dark. Yeah. So I have some bug spray if anybody wants it. It's I don't know, my side of the woods here is kind of buggy, and this fire is really hot. David, like, are you feeling toasty there?
No, I think the cool air is helping.
Yeah.
So when was your last camping trip?
Oh yeah.
Well, pretty much anytime we go upstate, it's a camping trip, because what we have there is a yurt. But we were in the mountains in the Adirondacks recently, but we weren't camping. So we've, yeah, I'd say the last time I was camping.
Some time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I sleep outside a lot, but it's not necessarily camping.
Do you sleep outside on your roof in Brooklyn? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I do.
nice.
Urban camping.
Urban camping. Yeah, exactly. Sleeping in plein air.
So when you go out camping and so can you like when you do projects, did you already like when you started out, it was all doing the music and being totally involved and coming up with everything, and now like everything grew a bit bigger, of course, and you have clients. If you go away, do you disconnect or are you still staying in that same vibe? If you're laying up your roof, you come up with new ideas, or is it
Well,
work, or is it still?
That's definitely when the space, when I can, most predictably access the kind of space that does go back and feed the practice. Obviously, I mean, I think that's true in whatever ways we find those pauses and those spaces. Obviously, and we need to cultivate those because it's that negative space. I think I try to encourage my kids to get bored. Because things come out of that.
Absolutely.
And actually, the campfire metaphor for me is I haven't been camping, but I almost always am tending a fire when I'm not in the city. And and so and I think that's just for me one of the most. It's kind of, there are a couple of things, and I've tried over the course of my drive. I can't seem to drink enough or do enough drugs or meditate enough to predictably get to this place. But when I'm tending a fire, or when I'm on a sailboat, for some reason those are guaranteed to put me into this kind of place where just enough of my attention is needing to be paid to the thing, the fire, the boat, and the rest is kind of not utilized, but in a trance because that attention is being held by that small part. It's like I'm saying a mantra 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
So anyhow,
it
when I'm
kind
amazed by this low poly little thing in front of us, and not really actually in front of us, is
we're in
evoking some of that same sort of sense. It's kind of cool. It must be maybe brutally boring for an audience, but it's great for
I don't
us.
know. Are you guys bored? Let's just get really close to the fire here. See, it's so nice. That kind of leads into a question I had wanted to ask you, David. I mean, you seem to balance a lot of things. Let's go back to so we can see you. But I mean, prior to, I don't know what's been going on now. Recently, we'll talk about that too. But prior to the pandemic, you were balancing quite a large studio, at least 30 people plus people remotely, huge projects going on all the time, lots of contractors, family, your yurt. I mean, how do you balance that? And also, so how do you make the space for the things that you want to do?
Well, I want to do all of it, right? The lucky thing, and I think this was something that we explored, all of us together in Montreal at the summit, was a very unusual number of us, this community of practice, are doing what we want to do, right? And we're finding ways of being compensated for it so that we can do more of it. And so for me, all those things are like, there's, it's careful what you wish for, I think. And I think that's something that's shared by a lot of people who are kind of working in this space. And so it is about balance, and I don't think I get it right. And I work hard at it. So, I think it's easy when you have something that is going through various stages of success as a growing studio. And that's exciting, and it's gratifying, and it's also the vehicle that we're using to travel down this road together. So it has all this attention that it gets. And then within that, obviously, there's the usual attempts to balance the fires, the unwanted fires that crop up and that need to be attended to, and then the things that are really going to sort of propel the studio, in terms of our creative and technology responses to interesting problems, or what do we want to be? Again, going back to some of the themes from that.
What do we want to be
talk. What do we
when?
want to be when we grow up?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's and then obviously everything is in the mix, and I think it's a
Exactly.
constant trying to pay attention and come back to right. This feels
Yeah.
like a crisis, but actually I need to attend to this or whatever.
Yeah. And do you think like you have it under control now? Is it like a full balanced circle where you have like the creative person? Or is it like, I think most of us, like a sinus going up and then you only adjust it when you're over the top and then you go back again and up and
I
constantly.
like the metaphor. I almost as you're doing that, either it's a side scroller video game or it's flying something. And I definitely think, right now we're in this period that's really defined by the degree of uncertainty and the rate of change that we're all absorbing, right, across these cascading fronts. So actually, I think the last 20 years of AV&C have equipped us pretty well, because it hasn't always been rosy, and you don't always see as far as you want to see. I would say we're definitely evolving and maturing. I mean, we couldn't be still around if we weren't, and that's the good news is that that's a process that is more and more of what I do, is figuring out how we can evolve. So it does get attention, and it doesn't always feel under control. And sometimes that's because we're struggling for cash, or we're too busy, or it's never because we run out of sort of a curious and open-minded, creative approach, or ways of finding technologies that will play together towards an outcome. So it's really just about being alive as an organization that needs that kind of work.
And did that translate? Like, did your previous creative work now transition into keeping the company busy? And can you get
yeah.
Or is it like just a pain in the ass?
No, it's so I get to have both. So I get to really be involved, to the degree that I allow myself to be, really, on and that's very much the case on the artwork. It's very much the case on the client-facing work when. Certainly when we're in the early stages. So I get to kind of have some of the fun and then maybe not inherit as many of the implications. And since I'm not too busy working on the implications, then I can continue to elaborate what we want to do as a group, as a studio, as a business. So that's ideally how that's supposed to work. And then shit happens.
Yeah, but the thing that I found, I mean, what sort of ties us all together? I'm sure we'd all be friends if it wasn't for Touch Designer, but Touch Designer is kind of what brought us all together. And from my perspective, sort of, in my work of being very, very connected to the community, I find it's this constant, everyday, new, one up the new. Really interesting, just this and the more it goes, the broader and the more also pointed all these areas of development become. And in a way, I'm lucky that I'm glad that I'm not a maker in the sense of making projects. I mean, how do you, with all the things that you could do, right? How do you sort of hone in on sort of choosing what tools you're going to use?
Yeah, so I think you guys didn't make a thing, you made a thing that makes things. And so, already there's this sort of self-generative fabric that is Touch Designer, right? And if it wasn't open and didn't have all the hooks and didn't have all the, it wouldn't be as it wouldn't be as central to so many people's practices, right? Because everybody gets to adopt it and have this commonality of how the technology works, but then this total flexibility of how they use it to express themselves. And so, that's what we think of as a platform that's, just from a pragmatic standpoint, strategically smart to invest time and effort and be a part of a community with. If it were a single-use tool, okay, great, it's going to fit inside a pipeline, but in a way, on the certainly on the public-facing side of our projects, right? So I know a lot of folks that are doing projects. Certainly, we see this a lot in artwork, where the whole world lives within Touch Designer. All the communications, all of the management of assets and things like that is happening within Touch Designer. We're more using it during the production software phase of the project to be the expressive, the thing that can handle at real time at ridiculous pixel canvas sizes, all the generative and real time things that we need to do to make these things behave the way we want them to. Mm-hmm. Then for us, it's important, without getting in the weeds, it's like, okay, Python, great. Now all of a sudden we have this lingua franca that ties what we're doing on that front end with everything that we're doing in offline rendering, which is also happening in Touch Designer, and all the juicy stuff that is choreographing this, our conductors and things like that. So, it's for us, it behaves like a platform as opposed to behaving like a tool. And so we haven't run out of things to explore. Yeah. And of course, you guys are so responsive to the community. I think we've had the privilege of having some just, breakout talent, kind of share our orbit for a while. Mm-hmm. And that means that we're oftentimes on the forefront of asking for things or suggesting ways of doing things or showing you that we made a thing and wouldn't it be great if you made it official instead? Or, and those kind of conversations happening with the people responsible for a platform that we rely on so much is another huge piece of it, So, and the responsiveness of that and having, Malcolm and just, people just at ridiculous levels of knowledge and proficiency and ability to do something about it, getting involved in what we need. So it's just amazing.
Yeah, you said at
if you ever
the
need
summit,
a commercial, we can just re-edit this. If you ever need
a commercial,
re-edit this and put some flashy, catchy music to it.
Sure.
I mean, right? You guys too. I mean,
yeah.
And I was talking now mostly about the production side, but what about the design side? I mean, we prototype video, so that's another thing. It's the ability to just kind of ideate into something that has all the best properties of a material that you could play with, but it's still underpinned by code. And so it's just this. It's such a great place to start thinking. And then obviously it goes into previs. Now, of course, we're really leaning heavily into Unreal now on our real-time pre-experience stuff. But you know what is bringing all that world to life? Real-time frames being shared in from various outputs of Touch Designer. And there's data flowing between them. And again, it's part of an ecosystem. Sorry, but I'm actually curious, Roy, you showed some stuff at the summit, but even more recently, it's just gorgeous. And it's almost a level of production that we don't even think about in Touch Designer, which is
nice.
I'm always pretty fascinated.
Yeah, it took like we're coming from two sides, like me and my brother. Like he always been programming, I always been designing, And then a couple of years ago, we just spent the winter together trying to make a game. And then we found out that we can create really nice looking stuff using code. And it's a different mindset of designing. That's the good part. The whole real-time side, like you don't have to wait for renders anymore. And that means like not only in the end of the process where you normally put on a render and wait for a day and then see how it is, but every small little detail, like if you're doing a keyframe editing of an animation, you're still determining like, okay, I want to put this keyframe here, and then you play it back. But with the whole code stuff, you have instant like feedback what you're doing. So you're shifting a bit, and like you no longer determine yourself how it's going to look like. You just play around, and then see what pops up. And that's the good thing. And I'm really lucky to have such a strong connection, a good connection with my brother. Like we in 2 words we have enough, and he's really good in the shade and the really hardcore uh, forefront of the stuff. So we can get that Unreal quality kind of stuff because he's really into the math side, and that really helps.
Mm-hmm.
But it's yeah, and there's no way back for us. There's no way back. We don't want to go
No,
back to the
no.
traditional thing. Yeah.
I mean,
The
you
only
guys are.
problem, however, is like
Go ahead, sorry.
sorry, when you do it in production, there's a lot of stuff. Like the whole pipeline also changes. Like the whole like you can no longer do sketches because you basically have to program the whole thing already. And we find it really hard to convince clients, for instance. Like how can we? Um, there's so much psychology being involved that you have to explain the whole process and explain what's possible with it. And I have the feeling now with the whole Corona stuff, there's a couple of people that had the time and they're really to dive into it. So I think there's a huge boost. But I'm really curious, like how that went for you. Like obviously now you
Mm-hmm.
already have a name and people come for you, like okay, we want that. But how did that transition go? Like was it frustrating or was it really smooth?
In terms of
Pre and post.
during Corona, or
Well, before, like
before.
I mean, I really believe in this approach and the real time and the connecting everything to everything.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people are used to it yet.
No, and it's hard to and it's hard to show the value. And so, you come in and you're much more expensive. Let's say maybe as an example, we're more expensive than the client expected us to be. And maybe they're comparing the entire ecosystem that we're creating against what it would take to make a video once and fill this gorgeous canvas that's been also spent oftentimes lots of money on with with this piece of video. So we got to really thinking more about like, okay, how do we bring that value? We know that it's important because this thing's going to be out there for 3, 5, 7 years. It has to take care of itself. It has to watch itself, and if it has a problem, it has to kind of do a few things to fix itself while it's telling us that it has a problem. And so all of a sudden you end up with this whole kind of ecosystem approach. It also makes sense for us because we can have multiple teams work and in their own tracks while communicating across those layers of the stack, let's say from back end to front end, or what we call front end, and so I think it ends up being for us, we talk about it as deep media, and we've kind of brought it to a kind of an ROI kind of speak biz talk. Um,
Yeah.
so we talk about it as, if you think about the operational sustainability of something, let's say that we're going to spend $1 million to put some pixels on some architecture in an interesting way. Already, the fact that we've done it in an interesting way means that it's not really a great place for the client to slap their TV commercial on it because it's not even the same shape, let alone the content's irrelevant for that audience, let alone that it's all wrong for all the reasons. It doesn't even have a useful format. So already they're saying, okay, we're going to produce something custom. And then we start to have some content strategy conversations, and we hear from not one, but 5 different storytelling groups within the organization That might be marketing, it might be communications, it might be the scientists who are doing R&D, all these people that want to communicate through this thing. So now we have this super complex content strategy, and we're like, so how often do you want to, you know, keep this stuff fresh and relevant? And they're saying, well, you know, frequently. And then all of a sudden you just start to multiply the number of stories that they want to tell with the kinds of frequency that they want. And you say, all right, so you're going to spend $250,000 4 times a year to produce videos for this thing? Is that really what you were thinking? Or, you know, give us that money and we'll spend it once and we'll build this ecosystem that will actually create content out of raw materials, out of assets, out of contextual data that already live in your ecosystem. And you know, and then we say, look, you know, if you went the traditional media route, your cost of owning this thing actually increases year over year over year. What cost $1 million on day one costs you $3 million by the time it stops working and you decide not to fix it anymore in 5 years. So, you know, why not spend a fraction of that today? Yeah, it's more than you thought you were going to spend, but it's capital, it's an investment, as opposed to capex. You know, this ongoing opex of the marketing dollars. So, without getting into the weeds of it, it's just, I think we just tried to figure out what matters to some of the decision makers. I mean, we're always gonna have, you know, we're gonna fall in love with, and they're gonna fall in love with us, whoever the main sort of storyteller or creative or marketing voice or curator, because we're really sort of serving their voice. But we also have to have the people that are going to spend this ungodly amount of money. They've got to fall in love with us too, and they're more likely to fall in love with a model that shows them revenue neutral in year 3 and saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in year 4. It's just, so I don't know. Some of that's super like pragmatic, you know, sort of just, you know, but that's how we've been able to scale some of the projects, is by making it kind of strategically viable. In fact, it's all of a sudden, oh, we've got to do it this way. The AV&C deep media of, you know, algorithmic scheduling and just like, you know, relieving the burden on the curator, relieving the burden on the content creator, relieving the burden on the scheduler and the person who has to actually, you know, pump stuff into these spaces. And that means generative content, and that means real time, and that means touch designer.
And on that's on the context level, like to getting the clients in, and on the content level, like, do you have like art projects on the sides that you test out stuff and are totally free, and do those things end up at one point in a client project, or is it like totally separate stuff?
So they're totally separate in terms of whose voice we're serving, right? And being clear about that actually keeps us from getting a lot of stomach aches. So I would say the art practice, and now what the similarities are we're exploring similar techniques, oftentimes with the same technology that might have a very pragmatic use on the commercial studio client-facing side, but we end up sort of perverting into some weird hack in the art side. Again, similar technology, similar. So it's, but there is total freedom on the art projects, because we're exploring themes that are interesting to us, that, you know, light as a material. So there's definitely stuff that we could think of it a little bit as a lab, but I'm careful not to think of it as a lab, because we do R&D on the commercial side that is just, hey, we need to solve this interesting problem. And it's either because we want to have this capacity or because we're doing some innovation on behalf of a client. But on the art side, but they inform each other. There's no question, no question. It's something that germinates as an idea or as a theme on an art piece or in an exploration for an art piece, because, you know, on the art pieces, we can also allow ourselves much richer, broader, and kind of a different pace of exploration than we do on the commercial side, where it's much more like tuck, 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 you know. So it ends up meaning that, you know, it's like that time on the roof, sleeping on the roof or whatever, or watching a campfire. That's where a lot of those, um, you know, those thoughts end up coming back over the commercial side for sure.
Someone from the campsite next to us just asked a question. They wanted to ask David how much you're able to reuse things that you make on each project.
Yeah, I mean, from a business standpoint and a sanity standpoint, and a sense of momentum in the way people are working, there's a real benefit to um, looking at the things that we do over and over again, or that become a kind of a platform on which we can start to work on the things that are interesting to us. And building those tools is absolutely something that we've been doing, and actually have really, really been concentrating on across the board, across the stack. And Colin was with us at the summit as well, and gave a workshop, in fact, on Loom, which is sort of, or his, we talked about something that we call Loom internally, which is
Right.
like that sort of what that environment um, looks like as a framework for us that sits on top of Touch Designer before we start to be interested in what the expressive parts are and what the, but it gives us all those communications and things that we want to make it a part of our ecosystem. So anyhow, I think it's well, I lost the thread actually.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
but just
And
basically, yeah. I
Oh, the
mean,
campfire across the
re,
way asked.
yeah. The campfire next door. That I guess they're listening in and like, what does that guy
Sorry, I
do?
got a mosquito in my
No,
ear.
but yeah, I have bug spray. I'll spray you some.
Yeah, but how do you reuse? So, I mean, that's the upside, right? Is absolutely we want to do that, and so we end up modularizing, and then all of a sudden we start getting good about how we use our repos and our GitHubs, and how we, and all of a sudden all these aspects of best practices from like real software companies start to like leak into our process, and it's all been great. And then we have to make sure that we're not overdoing that, right? Because if we standardize too much, then we're just painting by numbers, and that's not what we're interested in doing. That's not what attracts the people that make this a vibrant place to come to
No,
work.
no.
And it's not, and it doesn't attract the clients that are going to allow us to really explore stuff. So
Yeah,
it's that's a balance for sure,
yeah.
for sure, for sure.
yeah,
I
I think
think it.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's safe to say that you like to design systems, right? And once you have I mean, because you like to see how they're going to work. And once you have a system in place, it's fine tuning that system, changing that system, modifying it, perfecting it for different situations. But I think the system is at the kind of center of a lot of this.
It definitely can be. It's definitely a scaffold on which,
Mm-hmm.
it just means that we don't have to start from scratch, and we can learn from our mistakes, and we can have a vernacular, technical and in the way we work. And, we can call things by names and we know what we mean. They have handles. And so we can talk about sort of blocks of functionality or approaches. And sometimes it's not even a thing. It's a collection of the four ways that we've done it in the past. And it's actually, you know, I say, oh yeah, let's make sure that we use sensor fusion. And it's like, okay, for us that means we get FLIRs and lidars and this and that and the other, and we sort of bring them together into a model. Let's say that's a kind of a digital twin of how people are behaving, and then that's a service that all our software downstream can use to know how the humans are behaving. And it turns out that's, I talk about that way, and that's not a thing that's really a thing yet. And so the software team will tell me, well, actually it's this, and it's one of these two ways that we've done it before. And so that becomes a path that we say, oh, you know what, that's a really good thing for us to actually make into a tool, make into a service that we can continue to use.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
those are also the things maybe when things are a little quiet, or when we try to preserve a little bit of time from people having to.
Oops. David, I
Oh, we
can't hear
lost.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And are the rainy days. Did
okay.
you lose me?
Yeah, we got
Yeah,
you back.
but you're back.
It's almost like you never left.
We got a question from the
Yeah.
Michelle. Go ahead.
Michel Didier, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, Michelle has a question. Do you want me to read it? Michelle says, been pushing quite a lot for Git and Touch Designer working together even in the current not so friendly situation. I'm curious how you guys use Git at AV&C. Also, how many developers are involved per project repos usually?
Oof. I'm going to have to offer to get back to you with some detail, because I know that we definitely use Git. I know that we, and don't forget, a lot of what we're doing within Touch Designer also is on the Python side, and we're setting up a lot of things. So I know that we have a way to work together within Touch, and I think we've done some things to make that happen, that uses Git and that allows us to have kind of almost segmentation of the networks. That means that people can work together. It's not just that part of the software that's there. So anything that we're doing, maybe in a WebKit sort of, HTML, CSS sort of stack would also live in there. All the Python stuff that runs our middleware, all the stuff that's going into the CMS and Django and databases. So it is really where it all comes together. I know that there's a sort of an evolution of how we've brought Touch Designer to be a friendly member of that process, but I don't know the detail. I'm happy to share though. So if there's a way to follow up, I'll do so.
And there was also something which was remarkable. Like I saw the workshop of Colin at the summit, and I was so astounded, like how much detail and how much you guys are willing to share. Like that whole process of building up, apart from the content side, because we have a lot of people like us as well. We design stuff and things like that. But to set something up in a permanent installation, it's a lot of work and a lot of trial and error. And Colin gave this workshop and basically told like how you guys set it up and what the pitfalls are and stuff like that. And how are you on the whole sharing? Like in the Touch Designer community, there's a lot of sharing involved.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that at one point stop sharing because they want to keep everything to themselves, money involved. And I noticed that you guys don't do that.
No.
Well, I'd say
sharing.
that's evolving too. That's evolving too, because look, I'm human too, and I think I can totally empathize with the idea of like, oh, great, we've got something now that's special and it's to us, and it differentiates us, and it gives us a leg up, and it allows us to X, Y, Z. And we're this studio, this company has been around long enough now that we've had a good run with that vibe. but I also think, and I think my mic's going to change. So hopefully, let me know if it still works. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. But not my mic, my beer can.
Your beer can.
The idea there is, I think, we looked at the summit, and actually the prompt came from Derivative and from Isabel's team as they were starting to talk about what the summit was. And what I didn't want to do was go and do an ad for AV&C. And so in a way, it forced us to figure out like how generous could we be. And generous, I mean, is a grandiose term, but ultimately generous in terms of like, okay, this feels risky. We're going to talk about ourselves and the things that we tell our clients make us special. But in fact, we can recognize that there's an entire community of people that in some way is part of this Venn diagram and that we're all aligned. And so then the question is, okay, are we successful enough as a business that we can start to say that we actually want to be making this industry, quote unquote, more viable? Is there a way that we can start to act together in those ways? And so we're trying. I would say it's new. We have a lot of voices within the team who are, starting to be more engaged in community settings and sharing, and that's something that we're trying to encourage. There's not yet been anything that we've pushed to say open source or something like that, other than say the framework that Colin shared as a result of his during the course of his workshop. So, but also there's an interest in people. People are also starting to wanting to share via teaching. So, Colin's really inspired by Matthew Reagan and folks that are out there just pouring their knowledge. Talk about generosity, right? So that's inspiring. So as we grow up, in this studio, we're having some of those same instincts. So I'd say you'll see more, but it's not been the track record.
Yeah. Well, I think the pandemic or the lockdown situation, where for the most part work kind of ground down to a halt, or many projects went away or stopped, performances, festivals, etc. And I think for our community especially, that it turned into a massive R&D, self-improvement, learning, teaching, and one of the things that I really appreciate about our community is its generosity, right? The fact that people learn something and they teach it. And if you look, if you go to derivative.ca/community and you look at all the posts that people made during the pandemic, the last 4 months, tutorials, assets, just giving like so much stuff. It's incredible. So I think one of the positive, I hate saying anything is positive about this pandemic, because it's certainly a terrible thing, but there's no doubt that that people have had a chance to really hone their skills and to develop a lot in their work.
No question. And it is tough to talk about the sort of the upside of the downside,
Exactly.
And I think it we could go all about the downside, but I think everybody's got that in their bones. We all know what we're talking about. And the layers of challenges too. But man, what has kept me going, at least, is this total balance that I'm finding, and actually a slight advantage. I feel like, yeah, actually the last few days have been a little tough. They felt a little, that movie Groundhog Day kind
Oh,
of,
really? What
waking
happened?
up feeling like in a loop, and it takes me effort and a couple hours maybe to sort of get back. But on the whole, so many spells that we were under have been popped instantly. It's not been this kind of evolution. It's like one day we were all working 5 days together for 10 hours, 5 days a week, and the next day we weren't. And separate from the business world implications and them discovering that, oh, we could have done this all along, et cetera, the just shattering of shared illusions and expectations and habits has actually been one of the most inspiring things that I've seen in a long time. Obviously, again, and I touched on this in the conversation with Alex Chetwertinsky early in the pandemic, actually, that it's born by fear and it's born by painful experience, but it is having the effect of opening up possibilities. So if all these big fun things that we felt were foundational are now all up in the air, and they're almost in solution, they're floating, there's space between them, you can actually, we've got a little bit of time before they, succumb to gravity again. You can affect that configuration. Right. So I think that's true. What you were saying about individual practitioners and how they've been spending their time and all the amazing stuff that we've been seeing, just outpouring again of, what I was saying about boredom. Well, in a way, this kind of confinement and lack of change of scenery and lack of, it's really those landmarks that come into our day in terms of memory. It almost becomes this timeless vibe, and that's similar to boredom. And I think this kind of output makes sense. but we're doing that as an organization too, is the big picture, you know. So we're getting the opportunity to reconsider a lot as well, and also what do we want to take this time to invest in? And you know, I think we've all had plenty of opportunities to, and in some cases we've joined in some cases we haven't. But these kind of more knee-jerk reactions to, oh no, I can't have my festival. How do I put it online? Oh no, I can't have my this. How do I put it on Zoom? Oh, you know, and we were trying to say, okay, you know, there are some things that are going to be temporary, and then some things that are just going to be a new way of working. And how do we focus on those things? And we actually put a lot of energy into what we call our kind of pre-experience practice, because already, you know, we design places that don't exist yet, and we have to make our, you know, help ourselves and our partners and our clients understand how this place is going to behave with a digital layer in it and with people in it. And so, you know, we have gravitated towards using game engines to create those environments. And first as a design tool, like, hey, let's move through the space. How does it unfold as you move through it? Oh, look at that. This one wall comes into view in this cool way as you walk through. Okay, cool. Let's do something on that wall. I don't know. So you can start from even that, and then all of a sudden we're starting to imagine where canvases would be. Then we're able to populate them. Then we're able to actually pipe, you know, touch designer output into those canvases because it's generative. Well, now all the touch designer is missing is knowing what the humans are doing, and usually it would get that from sensors. But because we're in the game engine, we can actually simulate that and give that to touch designer. So we create this full loop, this little digital twin of the behavior of the space. And so that's something that, you know, we can't do enough of. And now we are now designing for spaces that we can't visit with our clients because of COVID. Right. So the same tools come really into play because now we can, and we're actually working with Epic and with NVIDIA on all the ways that we can actually stitch a pipeline together that allows us to design together in the 3D environment, and then obviously share it with arbitrary numbers of guests in various ways. So we can have design reviews, or we can have experiments. So obviously none of that is unique to us. Everybody is doing that, but that's our little version of it and why it matters to us. And sort of it's what we've been putting a lot of effort in terms of getting good at in this time.
So go ahead, Roy.
Are you ever going to make a game? Like, it's a small step, right? From
it is a small step. I mean, here we are in this Campfire environment, you know.
Wait, I have to bring something in. You guys keep going, but just this has been sorely missing.
Hello. Hello.
Poor David. He's got fire going right in his face. He's got a UFO like beaming him up. Anyway. Not to take away from what you were saying, please.
No, it's great. I mean, that's you know, so like you said, it's a fine line, Roy. Yeah. And I think you know, the same question people ask us all the time. Oh, you guys do VR? Do you do VR or you know XR? You know, and we're like, yeah, all day, every day, as a design tool.
Yeah.
Not what we deliver in, you know. It's, and again, I think, you know, talking about those impacts, as Isabel was talking about earlier. I mean, we're, and I think this is true for a lot of us in this community. We're about people in places having experiences through technology and sort of storytelling that we've baked in. And so that, you know, the impacts are real. But again, I think we're such a sociable species. We're finding, you know, we're going to find those ways to come back together, and I'm very optimistic about that. But in the meantime, there's so much in play. It's almost irresponsible to not look at the structural stuff that could be changed right now.
Yeah.
And that goes across the spectrum, from our practice to politics to.
So do you see that a bit as a research in a whole? Like how can you integrate technology? How can you make it like human and warm and stuff? And how can you enhance experiences? Is it like, or do you see it like per project, like let's explore this, or is there like a bigger goal?
I don't want to over sort of romanticize the technology because it also changes so fast that it's almost it seems counterintuitive to get too in love with it with any particular version of it. Um, but on the flip side, we also have to design things that last and that last for years, And so I think that's the balance is, and that sort of goes to how much of the work can be experimental. So, we might do a lot of experimentation in the front side of a project and reduce the risk of bringing that experimental technology or application into the project. But because again, it's underpinned by some of that stuff that has been used and tried and true, and we know how it behaves. It lets us have a little bit more, continue to have that flexibility, the more interesting stuff. And then to teach our clients that they want more and more of that and less of their logo.
Uh-huh.
And that's happening too, right? So we see it all around. All of us are having opportunities with clients who never imagined expressing themselves this way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what, 10 years ago? That was unheard of, right? You've had like the process of educating clients has got to have been like a huge part of your work.
Yeah, I think all of us who have been saying a lot of the same things for the better part of 2 decades, a lot of the pieces are clicking into place, right? We always had opportunities to do this work, but they were fewer and further between, and we had to go farther afield to find them. Sometimes we couldn't,
Yeah.
But now I think there's an entire there's a lot of awareness about, like I said, the kind of expression that this community is capable of, and it happens to tie into a lot of things that are interesting to clients these days, and our ability to see patterns in huge data sets and make beautiful, evocative work out of those that allows them to actually tell their business stories while this gorgeous piece of art is happening, because it's also telling a story. Roy, some of your work, I'm basing, I'm sorry, on the client, but some of your recent work, these wavy, there's a fear in the middle of it, I want to say.
Oh, for the touch designer thing, for the website.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it was for?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was for a corporate client, where we did like the introduction for this corporate event.
Oh, it was the ocean race, I think.
Yeah. That's also that was.
That's the one I'm talking about, though. Anyhow, but when did that sponsor and that organization wake up one day and realize that they could do their job while allowing that kind of abstraction, and that, just gorgeous work.
Yeah, but there was a funny story because they didn't. They just had a month. Like we just pushed it through.
Okay.
Like, it was like a really last minute thing because the Ocean Race, it's a big organization and a lot of different levels and stuff. But there was just not enough time, so we took the opportunity. Like, okay, let's aim for this, and we managed to push it through. So we're really happy.
And now they know.
And that's the thing. Like that's the whole thing now, because now we have something to show. So now it's also easier for other, and they already saw like, okay, Volvo did this. So
it's a big name, And the closest we come to sort of doing that, you always see it in websites or capabilities decks or that kind of wall of client logos. And when we put ours up, I realize that really what we're saying, and so I just say it now. I say, like, people trust us to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's almost like you can't overdo that, though, because I think maybe I don't know, the bigger these projects get, I think the more stakeholders there are.
Yeah.
And so then the more different ways that we have to say it's the right way to go, right? And so we might, again, fall in love with, and vice versa, the main storyteller, the main voice on the project, but we have a global bank's infosec and network team and IT team to allow our technology to live anywhere near their headquarters or something.
Yeah.
And so,
Also, there's previs, like that's a huge thing, right? Because you can show people what you did for XYZ client, and they go, no, 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 I want something completely different. I don't want to do what they did. So I mean, now I think previs is such an amazing tool because it's so difficult to get across things that haven't necessarily been done or that don't exist, right? It's like you can't do it with an architectural drawing, but pre-visualization and 3D really kind of help.
And real time, and not just previous. With architecture, architects have been doing renderings since the beginning of time, and they're helpful, but they don't give a sense of the behavior of the space and the behavior of the layers that we're putting into the space in response to how the humans are. So, and that's why we kind of are using this term pre-X, as opposed to pre-Viz, because we're actually trying to, crudely, but model some of those feedback loops that actually are what the experience is created from. It's created from this thing that the media is doing in response to people and how it affects the architecture. And so, it's definitely invaluable because clients don't know what the hell we're talking about half the time. And so, being able to, use references and there's so much amazing work out there, and we're really, I guess, we will typically start a conversation with a client, not necessarily, once we've done our bona fides and we've talked about how wonderful we are, we start thinking about what something might be like by sharing other people's work too, right? So it's like those references and that swipe and look at what these people are doing, and so you are educating, right? What you were saying, educating the clients. We have a different language. Also, we're talking about working a different way, right? Usually 10 years ago, our clients would call their architect. Their architect would call, would then be would have a couple sub-consultants, but ultimately they'd be in control of the whole vision of the project from the very beginning. And that's just not the way this kind of work gets done anymore. The architect is a central stakeholder. The storytellers on the client side are, and the experience designers we are. And we all have to be together at the very beginning, right? And because the clients come to those first meetings and their interns have found all kinds of cool stuff on Vimeo and say, hey, make me that. And so first we have to say, no, we're not going to make you that, but we're excited that you find it interesting. Like, what about that do you think solves your business problem? And that starts the conversation, but it's definitely an evolution. And then you start to get into what we were talking about earlier, which is how do you justify the effort and therefore the price tag of doing this like grown-ups and making sure that this is operationally sustainable and it can be out there for 3, 5, 7 years.
Yeah. Amazing. So what's next?
Yeah, um, for you as well, Roy, because you're in Europe, like you're in Amsterdam, and supposedly in Toronto today we entered phase 3 in our COVID whatever, which means that we can now go to restaurants and eat and drink, which most people I know don't really want to do that yet. But anyway, I mean, Europe has seems to have been kind of up and opening a lot sooner, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
how have you found? I mean, things are starting to happen.
Yeah, it's opening up again, but yeah, it's like this the sinus wave, right? Like we had the big steep hill, then it went down, and for a lot of people think like, okay, it's over now, so we'll get out and we'll start doing stuff again, and already now a second thing is coming, and I think this will keep on going on for 2 or 3 times, and then it will slowly go away. But yeah, at this point, like we're right in the middle of this nice point where it's open, and we see it as well. I personally really have to get used to work starts happening again. Projects are
Right.
coming, and I was so into the whole research mode and now it's like yeah, you have to go back to the meetings and things.
Yeah, that's
and to the
tough,
site,
right?
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the place.
And
Yeah, it
people.
is. And people, yeah, and I definitely miss the people. Definitely
Yes,
miss
for
the
sure.
people. Yeah.
People with
But
masks.
I don't know. I mean, for me personally, like we're in the festival and the yeah, experience world, and we're already getting ready for a long term. We're hoping that in 2021 the season will start again, but
Mhm.
it's not sure yet. So we already put our minds in that this will take a while,
Hmm.
and that's. But a lot of people, if you don't work in that field, then you think like, okay, it's nice weather, it's over, let's go out again. But then, yeah, then it starts coming
Yeah,
back because
yeah,
the virus
yeah.
is not gone.
I mean,
Yeah,
our whole industry was called first in, first out, or
yeah,
first
yeah.
first for last
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 Last,
in,
last
last
in.
out,
No, no, no. Last out. No, I mean just out. Like
first out, last in.
first out, first
you
in.
see, yeah, ADP were
I should
definitely
never.
we were ideally
Last
first
out.
in, last out.
First
Yeah,
in, last out. Well, I
Because
mean,
our projects start sometimes years before um, there's a site.
yeah.
exactly.
And did it got all passed, or were people like confident enough to keep on going with the project? Go past.
Right now, I mean, New York, we're also, kind of, we were an early epicenter here in the U.S., and we had some good leadership at the state and regional level. And so, you know, the effectiveness of our quarantine was pretty dramatic. Um,
Hmm.
and now, as the sort of wildfires are catching across the states, I think in the aggregate, you see the numbers are disastrous. But actually, in New York, we're still enjoying some of the benefits of that early dedication.
Hmm.
But schools are trying to figure out how to open, and for sure, these stages and phases that we keep relaxing into are meaning that I was on a visit to a project site for the first time last week, um, and there were protocols and so on. But we've had folks for the last few weeks actually who have been starting to go back into places, and we're just letting people know what we need in place and in order to feel comfortable doing that. And obviously, there's a lot more dialogue right now. I mean, really across all kinds of topics, things that are now in scope for us as a work team community, the things that we talk about, and physical health and safety, and then obviously um, um, with the protests and especially the focus on Black Lives Matter. I mean, we've just been sort of like this. There's been just this cascade of interesting expansion of what we kind of now feel is in scope for us to talk about at work, and what we actually need to talk about at work. and what the folks of us that are running the place need to make sure is on the table. So it's kind of been wild. It's been a um, lots of quick evolution.
Yeah.
I think it was first out, last in. We were the first out in our industry, and our industry will be the last in because
Oh, you mean
so many things have to do with vast amounts of people and shows and live events. So basically, what we do will be whereas somebody will be serving drinks in a restaurant, but we will still not be making shows for 30,000 people or 10 or whatever,
yeah?
right? So that
I
is
got you. That makes sense. I thought you were talking about generally as an industry, like to an
yeah,
event or
yeah,
to a
yeah,
site. But
yeah,
yeah, no, in terms of COVID, I think certainly the event side of us. So like, I kind of categorize the impacts, the primary sort of business impacts on AV&C that have been really since March, but we've known about, we've been actually starting to feel it before then. Um, and we had some projects in Italy, some projects in China. So, or relationships that were working. So we kind of had a pretty clear advance warning. But the event stuff, obviously, for us, maybe 20-30% of our work is the more temporary stuff, the events, one night or
right,
weeks
right.
or,
That's yeah,
World Expo Pavilion or something like that. That just
yeah,
poof,
yeah,
totally
yeah.
overnight disappeared. And then the projects that are more permanent and that we're already in a construction phase. Well, there's so much momentum and capital, and that they're not going to not complete. And then there's the design work, which has for the most part managed to flourish actually and benefit from that sort of pre-experience workflow that we were talking about. And we've been doing some of our actually really, I don't say this gratuitously, like our best work on some of the most amazing things that we're being allowed to work on. It's
Now,
so our career. So it's right now. So
wow,
that's
that's good.
that's great. But the opening up of the construction now, we're sort of monitoring what's happening in the various places where we have initiatives about to start up. And San Francisco has a couple of projects that we're actually planning on going on site for. And, again, those conversations about who's comfortable with and with what are they comfortable and how do we weave together. Some folks might fly, some folks might take an RV and do a road trip.
Right,
Some
right,
folks
right, right.
might be substituted by local
Local
friends
operate.
of ours. So
Exactly, exactly.
it's just weaving together the solutions, which is we're good at that, and but it's actually about having the conversations and saying, okay, now we actually want to. We have to have all kinds of more conversations essentially to
Yeah.
operate right now,
But at
which is
least
good.
you're having those conversations now, which is excellent. This kind of relates to what we're just talking about. It's another question that came from the other campsite on the other side, and it's basically like how do
They're
you
loud.
how I know that we're super loud, but how do you anticipate using your office? I mean, how your studio space? How is it going to change in the near future? Is it going to be different? Like, are you? I mean, it's
Can we have them come over, especially if they have beer, because I'm out of beer. Um,
ah
the the
oh the
it's a
campers,
really
yeah.
great question, right? I mean, our clients have been freaking out about this, and because a lot of them have like millions of square feet of office space that they fill with their wonderful people and we help them create these workplaces that are compelling and engaging to be in and to cross pollinate with each other. And so, yeah, when it comes to us, we have a studio that we've been inhabiting now for 13 years, and that has been absolutely amazing. I mean, we have a big space. We can fit a lot of people. We can work in different configurations. We have some prototyping space. We have and
You
and
have
so
windows that
there's a lot of
open.
windows that open, air that's breathable. It's all but so really the configuration has been ideal. And I will say with um, my leadership team and just kind of working through all the implications of COVID and going through all the loans and getting all the sort of ways that we could support ourselves and our group through this. We've been meeting a lot. And one of the things that obviously is coming up is the idea of reopening, and especially as the stages progress around us. And first of all, we're not beholden to those stages. We can take our own pace through them, and we can decide what's right for us. And I think, we have been working through some of it is actually kind of interesting. How would we reopen? How do we create less density? How do we manage airflow differently so we're having air changes? How do we make it so that people aren't spending a duration of time together that would increase the dosage? All those kinds of things. How are we going to design our floor stickers?
Your
and
which?
then
Your floor stickers.
And then I stopped the conversation. Our floor stickers, and our stickers. How are we going to show 2 meters? But it's to date, until very recently, those conversations have been kind of stopped, primarily by me asking, why the hell are we in the office? Like, why are we? Why are we in the office? I know why we used to be in the office. But I actually have to ask that question, and I know that there are lots of good reasons, right? The kind of prototyping that we do is a physical activity, and we have to find a way to support that. In fact, increase that. Not everybody is able to work from home effectively every day, whether it's because they have kids or they have, as my wife and a husband and father who is too loud on conference calls. There are any number of reasons why we need to get, why the office would need to be available for folks. There are just some folks that need to hold down the fort and receive the mail, and things like that. But and we want to workshop with clients, but the idea of us returning en masse 5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day together in this space is simply not going to be a reality for a year. Let's call it a year. It's probably more like 18 months. So that's a pretty interesting thing, because that starts to say, well, what would be the configuration of space? It's almost like the office becomes less of a seat of the corporation, so to speak, and really becomes more of an amenity hub and an activity center for the people that congregate around the work. And that includes us and includes our clients and partners. And just kind of, I think it's a bit of a pivot of how at least we see this space evolving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's kind of, it's I wouldn't say, it's one, voluntary, two, necessary versus mandatory, right? It's kind of like free school, where if you work better from home, or if you work better from the park, or if you work better at night, go for it, right? It's not, obviously there are times where we have to come together for meetings and et cetera, but I think this really also has changed the way we view remote, right? The idea of working remotely, right? There was this idea that you couldn't sort of track how well people were working when they weren't at the office, but I think this whole period has proven that to not really be true.
Tracking. It turns out the tracking.
No tracking.
Tracking. Yeah, it's just. I think a lot of that's one of those spells that was shattered. I think for a lot of the business world. Not for us. We're just well set up for it, and we already had a culture that sort of has those flexibilities. Different people are, the same person will be working in 3 different ways, and one of those ways might benefit from being able to bounce around people, and one of them needs quiet time. And some of the developers don't even come into the office until the afternoon because they want to be here for a bunch of hours after the rest of the noisy people go home. Whatever it is. So that kind of we've been fairly well set up for it. That doesn't minimize the impact. It's still been a absolute deprivation on a lot of levels, but no, tracking is not the issue. I think what's great is that a lot of our clients are finding out that they were scared of false premise, and that people are actually really responsible, and you give them a little bit more flexibility. So anyhow, I think it's
and when they like what they do,
and when they for sure when they like what they
right?
do.
So I mean, yeah. I don't know any touch designer type who doesn't work all the time, or a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, quiet time around
Well,
the
because
campfire.
what's interesting about this community is that we often work and play
Simultaneously.
in the same tool. But no, actually,
Yes.
it's almost like you don't have to put on a different persona and reconfigure your brain. You're like already in the place that you would express yourself. Or, it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know. Did that answer? That was a pretty that question about
I think so. I think,
the
oops,
use of the
fire.
space. I think is definitely going to evolve. And listen, we're talking our clients are talking about the same stuff. So we've been saying to them like, hey, remember all the things that we wanted to do the last time we did a project together and we couldn't do because X, Y, or Z wasn't in place. It's like, and we couldn't get to it because everybody's running a mile a minute to try to get to the finish line of this amazing project. But if we'd had that infrastructure piece in place, or if you had that connection, that API to your database or whatever. And so, we went back to them in this period and really have been talking to them about, the car's pulled over. Let's change the spark plugs. Let's do the things that are impossible to do when we're driving 120 kilometers an hour down the highway.
You have the best analogies, honestly. Or
Well, I mean, but then it took us 16 weeks to start taking our own advice. But we're taking our own advice now.
that's
Yeah.
good. That's good.
Good. Good.
So, guys, it's 4:20. We're just after
Yeah.
4:20. I mean, we've been surprisingly, this fire doesn't appear to need any more wood. You'd think that that's one of a few of the things that we wanted to add to this environment, right, Roy? Like make
Yeah,
it,
and in the
yeah,
interactive with the chat as well. Like
yeah,
basically make a small game out of it. Yeah. But it will come.
Say
I mean,
more.
it's an ongoing experimentation, an ongoing project, and it doesn't have to be finished right away. And if
no,
someone
no,
is out there and wants to contribute, then please let us know.
yeah, yeah.
It
On
should be
my
a,
yeah, the other thing on the wish list is marshmallows that people on sticks that we can from the chat you can stick a marshmallow in the fire. I mean that might get really distracting, but
we'll see.
we have a
We'll
peer
see,
we
but
have
it's-
yeah. Anyway,
Maybe that's how you ask a question.
what's that?
That could be how you ask a question.
That
Yeah.
could be exactly. I mean,
Unless you
David
be a
is,
bear.
huh? Unless
A
you're a
bear.
bear. Yes, the bears kind of are a bit of a worry.
The sound design is actually talking about that sense of place. I think that's really contributing. There's some like, primal response that I think we have somewhere deep in our lizard brain to that sound. Kind of amazing how just that little layer
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
does
think
so much work.
there's some crickets and yeah. I mean, yeah. It's very comfortable place. And we were talking earlier that we could just sit here and actually not talk, right? We could just sit here and enjoy, and maybe the guys next door would bring us some beers, and we could just sit here and enjoy the fire, right?
Yeah.
Chill out.
Yeah,
wonder
and we
how- I
don't.
wonder-
Yeah, we don't end it. We just kind of
Stop talking.
drift off at different times and stop talking, and then there's somebody left.
The
kicks
sun
right.
comes down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, did you guys see the comet? Now that I'm looking at the Roy's beautiful night sky and Saturn and the banana moon, did anybody have a good look at Neowise, the comet that's been lurking around our solar system for the last couple of
I've been
weeks?
seeing other people's. I haven't seen it with my naked eyes, but a friend and turns out a neighbor who's actually really involved in a lot of the show control world, and is an amazing storm chaser as well. So he has all this
Oh,
amazing equipment,
wow.
and I think I've been
Unmarked
seeing
van?
his on that. Yeah. Sorry.
Unmarked van?
No, no. I think it's a fairly regular. It's not one of these
Okay.
tanks that he takes through the western and plains states. I think
Right.
he's like
Right, right,
having a rental car.
right, right.
He's been, I think, posting some John Huntington.
Yeah.
We had the same thing here, yeah, with a friend of mine. Took a lot of great pictures and time lapse, but I haven't seen it myself. But I also
Yeah.
must say, like I live quite in the center of Amsterdam, so it's really hard to look up the sky. When you have amazing sunsets, but the skies is really polluted with all the lights going.
Yeah. I
Brooklyn
mean,
also.
here as well, it was the last couple of weeks have been particular. Well, July, the minute July hit, it got super hot. And with the heat comes the mugginess, and probably like New York, like super, super, super moist. And so we tried with, I have a big set of binoculars, and we kind of saw a blurry dot with a bit of a line. And then we actually drove out of the city about an hour north with my small telescope, and you could see it better, but certainly not the kind of photographs that I've been seeing online. But
No, no.
oh, there it is, right behind you, David.
Right.
Good stuff. Well, thank
Well,
you guys. Hey.
Yeah, thank you for this amazing talk, David.
What a great,
Yeah,
what a
you'll
great
have to come
hangout.
back.
I mean,
Yeah.
I just, yeah, I think I'm definitely looking forward to coming back and listening, because I think this. I'm curious now to see to what degree the sort of like campfire feeling that I definitely have gotten through this translates on the more passive side. My suspicion is that it does.
Well,
So I'm really looking forward to you guys continuing this.
like Rui is having dinner and he's listening to the chat. Feels nice.
Oh, that's
he says.
right. Yeah.
And Paqueta throws in a marshmallow.
Ah, thank you, Paqueta. Yeah, I think I like it too.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, and it's a start. Like we'll keep evolving and we'll keep on building
Yeah,
it, and
yeah.
it's nice. I like
and
it.
for sure. I mean, we have some more people that we want to invite, but we certainly are open to people inviting themselves. So absolutely, feel free to invite yourself, and we will be making a post, a sort of more formal post in the community soon with. In terms of creating assets or creating parts to this and that sort of thing. But like Roy says, no rush.
Yeah.
And oh, look what came from the guys next door. I guess I should. Oh, here, David. I'm gonna pass. Oh, I wish I could pass it over. Yeah, there you go. And Roy. Oh, and it's open. Oh my God. Oh well.
That's nice.
Am I okay?
Don't pour it out.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay, guys. On that lovely, tasty note. Thank you
Think
for
the sun
joining
is
us,
coming up?
David.
Yeah.
Summit,
thank you.
the sun.
Thank you so
Oh yeah,
much for asking.
should I bring some sun up here?
I think the sun is coming up.
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring it. I'm just gonna manually do it to the point that I really like, which is right here, right there. Yeah, guys. So
All right. That was great.
yeah,
Thank you so much for that. Letting me hang out in
Lovely
your
time
campground.
in our little campfire haven. And
Yeah.
so thank you everybody for watching and staying with us and hanging out by the campfire. And we'll do it again soon. And big thanks to Greg for
Neighbor.
running all the controls. And I'm gonna take us out of the scene. See you later. Bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks,
Bye, guys.
David. Bye.
Oops. Oh, look at that.
Amazing.
Bye, Roy.
Bye.